Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. We are on our once-a-week schedule from now until post-July 4th, unless we have reason to do a second podcast here and there, which we might. I went to the trouble of really kind of mapping out, what all we're going to talk about in the off season, and I'll be honest with you, filled up pretty quick.
It did. I did this once, just kind of around events. I did this last year. It's like the annoying thing was there's nothing this week, and then the one week it's like the tour, the French Open and this big auto race and this big horse race, and everything was like in 1 week. I'm like, well, we're not doing 4 pods that week. That's just not happening. We'll have to pick and choose. But I think we'll have some extra content once we get towards the draft. But honestly, that might just be you coming over to join me in VR.
That's a good call, actually.
On a Thursday afternoon and talking some 50-year option, which I'm excited this week. We're starting to get close to more free agency news. We did see, I won't spoil all the stuff we're going to talk about tomorrow, but a signing in Washington, some players being released by Tennessee, like all of this stuff matters. If anybody remembers, like, Evan Neal was minus 200 to go to the Jaguars. And I cannot for the life of me think of the name of the player they signed. Who's the lineman they signed in free agency?
Cam Robinson.
Yeah,
They tagged him. They tagged him.
They tagged him, so he stayed with the team, and suddenly it's like, hey, maybe they go defense here. This could change things. So,
and even that was next assumption was wrong. That they were
the next assumption was Aiden. Absolutely Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah.
And we'll spend a long time in the Anthony Richardson steam, which is hilarious, honestly, in my mind.
I think Neal even faded to Icky before it flipped to defense, right?
It went Icky because he's, you could use him still on that line, and then it went Hutch. It was a process. I was just saying this in a chat. I want to write down all this stuff that's happening, like the Richardson steam today, so we can look back at this in May and be like, what a fucking weird journey we took, guys, because until you get through at least part of free agency and the combine, these mock drafts you're reading this week are really, really wild guesses. And I know there's some people that are putting in some hard work and trying, but it's so tough because even the guys who have information don't have a lot of information yet. And some big things are going to happen. Some weird steam's going to come out of the combine.
Really?
Free agency absolutely matters, especially for the teams at the top, like the Bears, who have $1 million to spend. But I digress. We'll get into that tomorrow.
I think they have several million to spend.
$1 million, 100 million.
Hundreds of millions.
I think it's like 100 million.
There are some markets popping finally. I
love it.
saw a bookmaker hang 3 markets today, and there's already shenanigans going on.
I call shenanigans. I just
You just called shenanigans? Okay.
They've been called.
Yeah, I saw Anthony Richardson was 50 to 1. You could get as many clicks as you want, $1,000 a pop. He's now 800 to 1, or 8 to 1.
800 to 1.
800 plus 800.
I did not bet any Richardson.
Yeah.
I would bet him at 800 to 1. I think that's
absolutely. That's probably not that far away from fair.
I would
we'll have a good laugh if he ultimately does become, the apple of someone's eye.
This conversation we're having here.
Yeah.
This is essentially a conversation we could have had about Baker Mayfield. Like
that's actually true. People got Baker in the 30 to 1 range, like knocking on the door of the draft.
Yeah.
Am I misremembering that?
I just don't see it because someone would have to trade up for. I just don't see there's multiple teams that are that in love with Richardson over all 3 other quarterbacks and 2 defenders. That they would trade up. So it does feel a little weird, but you never know. We wait for the combine.
What's the fair price on Bryce Young being the 3rd SEC quarterback drafted? Seems crazy in that context, but who knows? We'll talk a lot more about the draft. Talk a lot more about free agency. I'm excited to see what happens. Is there a free agency store you are especially keen to get just a general feel for?
I mean, the quarterback stuff, obviously, because it affects the draft so much. Like the Carr saga, the fact that Daniel Jones, that something has to happen there yet with either them coming to an agreement or doing some sort of tag or trading him for Christ's sakes, and then what they do with Saquon at that point as well, because that would put them in a unique position. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, seeing what becomes of that whole deal, that might be a little longer before we get. I think he has to sit in the dark for quite a while longer before we can actually get closure on that. But the quarterback stuff is important, I think, and then just like not just the Bears, but my God, we need a drink of water. Some of the other teams with a lot of money to spend and higher draft picks, because what they do matters to, if they have a list of 5 needs and they check a box like in free agency with one of them, it changes how we feel about them at the 9th, 10th, 15th spot.
Yeah.
Like Carolina is another good example of that. Depending on what they do, they're a team that's very liable to draft a quarterback if something falls or they move up, but if Derek Carr is in Carolina blue, then, which I don't think is the right color blue.
I really hope that doesn't happen.
The Carolina blue is the Tar Heels.
The only quarterback that moves the needle that I'm excited it just is Lamar Jackson.
I didn't even say him.
I am not in the same spot as likelihood. Most of the they seem to be pretty convinced that he sticks in Baltimore, and I don't know. That situation seems to have curdled pretty aggressively. So we'll see about that. But we're not here to talk about the future.
I have hot takes on Lamar too. We'll get to them someday.
Yeah, no, and maybe I just want to see him with the team that appreciates him more. Who's going to give him money and give him some weapons to work with so he can, put on a show. But it doesn't feel like the Ravens had so many opportunities to already give him the bag. I don't know. Like, I don't know that they're going to ultimately do it, which seems to be the expectation. So we'll see. We're not here to talk about the past. I mean, the future, Andy. We're here to reflect on the past, and the past being specifically the 2022-2023 season. A couple of interesting little nuggets for you, Andy. The average home field advantage this last year through 277 games was 1.8. 1.8. Interesting.
I think that's where we started the year.
I think
that was your projected home field.
Yeah, it was exactly.
So
and do
I
you
don't
want to
think
guess?
you can get much lower than that. Like, what is the absolute floor for that? Let's say 50 years from now, people are fucking teleporting from one city to another, and they're taking pills that give them the best 8 hours of sleep of their life. Mm-hmm. Like, what is the absolute floor for home field? Like a point and a half? It's still a ref bias.
Robot refs or
robot refs would take some of it away.
At that point, it's literally just the stadium environment and familiarity and the way your team is constructed compared to what your environment.
And if the Packers water the field before.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Exactly that.
I just don't see. I don't see.
Pretty small.
Yeah.
Never.
I don't see it getting a ton lower over the next decade. Like 1.5 to 2 is kind of probably the range.
It bottomed out in the pandemic year with no crowds at 1.3. It's going to take a while to go lower than that, I think. Yeah. You want to guess what home teams were against the spread over the balance of the season? Was 1.8 fair? What was the spread record of home teams this year in the regular
I'll just
season?
give you a percentage.
Okay.
51.963.
49.8.
Oh.
Home teams went 135, 136, and 6 against the spread this year.
So if you blind bet either side, you'd lost money.
You lost a lot of money, depending on how much you're staking, I guess. But at a minimum, you lost a decent chunk of your change. Home teams did go straight up. They were 158 and 117, winning by an average of 2.25 points. interestingly enough. A little bit of a divorce there, but that's because of the power of 3 pulling the actual result a little higher than what the fair market was. But how about that the market was so sharp that home teams were almost spot on 500 this season against the spread is pretty wild. The totals, not as sharp this year. And you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, this was interesting because we had a steady climb. And I don't know if we talked about this preseason, if we said we think this continues to go up or if it's leveling off. It did not level off. Like what did the average total end up being?
44.2.
Which is compared to last year, Drew?
46.5.
Yeah.
So we have a 2 point and 2+ point adjustment to the under. And it took a little while to get there.
I'd love to hear some guesses in the chat. There's no right answer, but there might be eventually if we
lots of contributing factors, sure.
But from the chat, if you guys want to start chiming in on the contributing factors to a 2-point average drop.
Amazing.
I think a lot of it was just the Broncos. It's still 32. It's not a huge sample. The Broncos can bring it down quite a bit. That's just mean. The too high D. Papa calls. Good. I think if we were playing, Price is Right. Family Feud.
Family Feud.
That
number one.
Number one on the board. Potato salad.
Yeah, show me potato salad. That's good, man. 44.2 is the lowest total that we have seen on average in the NFL going back to 2011 was 43.7. And this is a huge reversal in the trend because, again, the pandemic season totals got as high as 48.3 before now coming back down to earth. A lot of it is defensive scheming and really and truly the fact that the offensive minds did not really come into this season with a strategy to really bust the too high. And so the too high, it kind of got entrenched. Like that was really, everybody was doing it, especially if you had like a quarterback that could take the top off your defense. Like, okay, we're not going to let you do that. You make a team be precise and cross the street 100 times, get to the end zone. Eventually they're going to either stub their toe or your defense is going to come away with a game-changing play from a sack standpoint, or an interception is liable, or it just requires too much perfection, and only Pat Mahomes apparently can do that.
And it is a push and pull. I'm not going to come out here and say like totals will land a point higher next year. I feel like they will. I feel like just generally my thought process, what I've seen in the league over the last, freaking 20 years of, hey, offenses are doing this. And then, obviously sometimes there's rule changes that really affect things, but it's usually defenses adjust to it, Christ, remember when the RPO was sort of new and it was never like a brand new thing,
No.
A lot of things like that have been done in college for many, many years at a different type of scale, but it's like, oh my God, what do we do with this? Like, it was like, these are like Kaepernick years. Like Kaepernick is killing us with this run pass option, and then defenses adjust, or, in a really short sample size, if you want to really compress that, it's like, oh my God, the Wildcat really worked for that one game. And then like 3 weeks later, it had died. It was one of those memes on Twitter, RIP the Wildcat.
Mm-hmm.
Don't cry because it's over. But it is something. And I guess I'm a little surprised we didn't see better offensive scheming this year.
Yeah, same.
Fight against that. But at the same time, what is the best offensive scheming against that is taking short stuff over the middle. I call it the Kelsey zone. Like if you just want to take constant easy stuff to like and nobody else has a Kelsey really, but something like that, or a good slot receiver, good running backs who can scheme a nice wheel route, whatever.
Ooh, yeah.
And if you take that sort of stuff to beat too high, you may be a more efficient offense than you were not doing that and trying to press against that, but you still may score fewer points per game, even though you're being efficient. So maybe the ultimate answer is here that this type of defensive play calling is going to depress scoring And even the best answers against it are still just going to take longer to get to the end zone on average. Those drives just may take longer.
You know what illustrates that? EPA per play.
Yeah.
2020 season.
What a fucking segue.
The average EPA per play, 0.04. Last year, down to 0.02. This year, 0.005. We were almost at neutral. Like, offense and defense now squaring off to EPA per play of effectively 0 on average is amazing. And so basically, if you had an offense that could generate positive EPA per play, like the Eagles or the Chiefs, you were fucking amazing. Because
you did see this, as Sam Lipscomb points out, like some of the highly efficient offenses were run heavy, and some of them were very effective with their runs.
Mm-hmm. Surely.
That is going to be, a big gaudy EPA per play is nice, but a positive EPA per play at all, if you can consistently have, just positives, and your success rate is at a high enough level, I guess it's, if the other team can't score when you have the ball, if it takes you 10 minutes to drive down the field, such as life, I guess, if you're being efficient about it, that you're still going to overperform other teams.
Yeah. And, it's funny. All of this belly aching about this defenses, the too high, which was effectively designed to stop Mahomes. The league average EPA per play.
Good job. He only won the Super Bowl.
And not only that, Andy, he had his best EPA per play for of the last 4 seasons. It was noticeably higher. He was like at 0.14 last year. This year they had 0.17, 0.18, something like that. So in the absence of Tyreek Hill, their offense somehow got better, which I think leads me to my first kind of general takeaway or conclusion of this season. We are in the Pat Mahomes era, period. He is now the player to beat in the NFL. And a huge part of the reason is he came into the game as a young player with a physical set of tools that completely changed the way offenses could operate and the way defenses elected to play. And now in the interim, he has been forced to have to learn other ways to attack you. And he has successfully achieved that to the tune of, his offense was more effective this year in the absence of Tyreek Hill than it was the last 2 seasons, which is amazing. And I honestly age now he's a little bit more resilient to the aging curve because he has more ways he can attack you. The team itself, the Chiefs, has more flexibility to go add dynamic pieces to the roster. If they want to give you multiple looks, they can. Yeah, I think the fact that the Chiefs ultimately won the Super Bowl and, are being kind of lauded as, the clear champions, best team in the NFL this year is, I think, a very prescient sign of the future of, the next 5 years probably.
We never really talked about this in the. I'm not even sure if it got a ton of shine when we did a Super Bowl recap, but a big dig even on last year's Chiefs teams was Mahomes started to throw a lot more interceptable balls.
Mm-hmm.
And how many do you think he threw in the Super Bowl? I'm not super sure. I saw one.
Maybe.
I'd set the over under at a half. And a lot of, throughout the playoffs, and the Bengals game was good, and that was tough.
He had one pass that was behind a guy that if it gotten tipped, it could have been intercepted.
Yeah.
That's all I remember.
I think some of that got cleaned up just by the new scheme too. Mm-hmm. He was a lot, they still had moments this year, but especially when it mattered, that was a lot cleaner. I'm not sure if I want to give coaching staff credit for that. They did, and it's funny, the Chiefs did finally lose a coordinator. Didn't get me. We'll get to that further down the road. A lot of that doesn't matter at this point. We'll talk.
They elevated somebody who I was like, who got elevated? Oh, it's somebody good.
I know the Bay Hill is an elevated event, and then so is the players.
That's the next 2 weeks of golf, not this week, where we have the took the air out of the Honda Classic. So I honestly the Chiefs and Pat Mahomes in particular, Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes as a combo, Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes, and Travis Kelce as a trio, if you want to go that far. They were forced to learn and adapt and find new ways to make your life miserable. and they achieved it successfully. So best of luck to all the defensive coordinators now finding, a different way to defend these guys, because they've solved the problem. And you now need an offense to score into the 40s to be able to beat them at the biggest stage, as the Eagles learned firsthand.
You know what I hate with the Bieniemy thing too is like,
sure,
people are gonna say like, if the Chiefs are good next year, they should be good. I don't see a lot of reasons, if they work this, probably releasing one of their receivers, signing someone else, maybe a little slightly different type of receiver, they can probably improve a little. But the offense is going to be good, and people are going to be like, "See, the Bieniemy didn't do anything. That's why he didn't get hired." It's like, oh man, that's going to be a shitty take that people have.
Yeah,
and then all on top of that, like Bieniemy might be working with Howell, who could legitimately be like, he could be Malik Willis bad. We don't know how bad some of these rookies are. We don't see a lot of like Bieniemy. I like that he did this. I like that he's, forging on his own, trying to make a name for himself as a play caller. But man, it just feels like this is such a shitty spot to set him up for. He was doing nothing in Kansas City, and look how bad Washington is. Like, he's terrible. He's never going to get hired now, which I guess take a shot on it. So I'm not looking forward to that shitty take flying around.
Oh, it wasn't somebody good who got elevated. It's Matt.
Yeah, it was Nagy.
But he's back. He's back together with Nagy. Did you? And I missed it. Oh.
What's that? No, it's some
Nagy, Pat Mahomes there.
Chad had it right away, but yeah, Sam.
I don't know why I don't know why, but my StreamYard no longer wants to work on my fucking computer.
I think it may be me. Everybody I've worked with this week has
it's not. It's mine. 100%.
No, I know. I know, but it's Noops had trouble today a little bit before the show. Noonan yesterday. I just feel like it's my fault. I'm just down on myself a little this week.
Maybe it's StreamYard's fault, because it's since the Super Bowl. I've been I know I'm on delay now. This is going to be impossible to have a conversation, but I'll try.
You like to live.
Basically, louder. Yeah. Bad but louder.
No, I mean they're going to show their golf on delay.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, like some of the rounds are going to be on delay. It's not great.
Oh no.
All right. Now I know what you dealt with for those years when I was working on 28.8.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead with a point you want to make about your reflection on the 2022 season?
I mean, I'll just take the easy one right off the bat, and it's something we mentioned early and often towards the second half of the season, and I haven't had time to actually sit down with like SQDL and look into this, and I haven't decided what kind of splits I want to use for this thought experiment. It's not a thought experiment. It's an actual data experiment, but I'm not sure why it took us so long to put these two things together. But if you remember, Wong teasers were a little rough to start the season. And Wong teasers,
there were people who published like the death of Wong. There were people had some hot takes there. Yeah,
put him in the ground. His name is not Wong. But at the end of the year, it was probably a little hotter than it should have been, but it was awful fun when you would cash like 7 out of 8 legs every week. Wong teasers were super hot, and we finally just set it on a pod. We're like, well, the whole premise of a Wong teaser is based off this market is efficient. The median score, the median score is going to fall pretty close to this more often in week 12 than it will in week 3. Things should be fairly efficient here. And these Wong teasers are based off the efficiency of the market and the fact that we're crossing these key numbers and getting out to a spot at a reasonable price considering what it should cost us. Like, I think it's like minus 263 is what a single, like if you look at a Wong teaser as a parlay, a 2-team parlay, it's like minus 263.
Minus 260, something. Yeah.
Roughly minus 260. And I mean, the basic premise is this should cost you like minus 310. to do this. You're getting a discount on both legs. You parlay them together, the discount's even better. Minus 110 should be something closer to like minus 130. You're getting a solid discount on that, and you just do it long enough, and it's going to work out over the long run. But after some research, and maybe I'll jot some notes on this on Twitter once I actually look into this, I think there's probably a case for staking quite differently when you're doing Wongs.
Oh yeah,
where we're maybe not even like half units, like, hey, let's play him at the beginning of the season because I think it's still plus EV.
Still plus EV play, yeah.
But maybe quarter Kelly stakes, and then once we get towards the end of the year, 100 unit whale bombs. maybe not that extreme, but I'm definitely going to try to look at like I'll build up some curves of like win percentage week one, and I'll try to go back like 10 years, see what we have. I like it. I'll do it on the maybe even split it out by dogs and favorites, homes. See what we can do with some. Look at me! I might get into some GG plot here and build some actual charts if I get some time. But if it comes out like there's not going to be some like line of demarcation like it's week 8, guys. After week 8, jack it up. I think it's going to be a slow climb after kind of midway in the season there. Once the markets get tight, once the sides are tougher to beat. It's crazy. The Wong should be a little easier to beat. So totally. I'm still pissed that they wouldn't give me the Hall of Fame game because I was going to tease it with Chiefs plus 8.5. Which would have got there.
Yeah. Would have made it. The guys in the chat are giving me some funny and sad reminders of some of the rough ones, and what we could do even better with our Wong teaser performance if we just avoid international games and games where the quarterback gets hurt, then we're really cooking with gas, particularly in the last half of the season. So that'll be a lot of fun. But oh my god, the Christmas night Bucks getting that win against I don't even remember who was it John Skelton, the quarterback for the Cardinals? Because didn't Colt McCoy get hurt or something, and they still barely beat whoever the hell was out there for the Cardinals? I don't even remember. But Brady barely got that across the line, and that was a huge result. I don't need that on Christmas next year. Thank you though. That was a freaking overtime game. Oh my god, they won by 3 in overtime.
Trace McSorley.
Jesus. It was Trace McSorley. Thank you. Yeah, he's got a long-term role in the NFL. Maybe that's another reason one of the offenses were down, points were down, EPA per play was down. We had a lot of backup quarterbacks this year, and I guess there's a lot every year, but in the blind, I would say this was a particularly upticky year for replacement quarterbacks. We'll have to kind of actually do the math on that and see how many snaps were taken proportionally by replacements, but wasn't a great year for the quarterback.
That's pretty interesting. 100%, almost not 100%, but like what 90% of San Francisco's were.
Yeah,
I don't think you can count Jimmy G. He's he will be a starter in this league probably next year.
Yeah, that's a good point. But San Francisco did lose 110% of their quarterbacks to injury because they lost guys that they didn't even have.
Yeah, wasn't even on the roster.
They lost Josh Johnson, who wasn't even on the roster as of week 15, and he still was. He got bounced because of the head injury. I can't remember anymore, man. My brain is mush.
So many injuries.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. That's a good one. The Wong teasers and just in general, how you deploy capital over the balance of the season is huge. You're always going to have some regret if you go light in the season and they crush. I can promise you that. If they come out of the gate hot. Overall, speaking of coming out of the gate hot, a lot of my damage done in terms of winning this year was early in the season. I think overall I had a good season because I thought I went back and listened to the supercut that Dan did of our previews, and I almost thought is Dan doing this to just to try to boost our egos, because so many of the cuts were right on the money or just interesting points that ended up kind of dancing around what ultimately happened. It felt like it was selection bias to the good a bit, because I'm sure we were way wrong about a couple teams, but maybe we had said other funny things about them, so we didn't get into the supercut. But then I think broadly, we had a very, very strong read on what every team's kind of true strength was heading into the season, how their season would unfold, and what that would mean to awards markets, what that would mean to some of the exotics. And just in general, week by week betting early in the season, especially, was really, really solid. I committed to scaling back on total play, which I think saved my ass. Just because I definitely did not have a thesis coming into the season that unders were going to be hot. If anything, I thought maybe you would continue to see refs and the league trying to lean towards overs and scoring. But it was I thought we had pretty true reads coming into the season, and it served us pretty well. Dan points out the teams we were way wrong about were Seattle and New Orleans, which I totally get. I mean, New Orleans we were high on because we thought Jameis Winston could have huge upside. He ended up starting one game or something.
Yeah, I was just going to make the same point. The two teams we were the most strong on were ones that had way different results from the quarterback position than we thought we'd ever get.
Yeah.
And, we shit on Geno. We laughed at the fact
we thought, did we even know he was going to be the quarterback when we previewed Seattle?
I thought he would be the quarterback, but
okay.
I shit on him. I said the fact that you are in a quarterback competition with Drew Lock does not speak well to you. And the fact that Seattle not only hit on getting some sort of rejuvenation out of Geno, but the fact that both offensive linemen and both corners and the running back they drafted, like they essentially had 5 draft picks start and play well. Like their rookie draft was just primo shit. So that one was tough. And it's funny that the analog for that is the Saints doing that like 5 years ago, and the Saints being the other team we got really wrong. And oh man, I guess that was probably a combination of a bunch of stuff. Like Michael Thomas, we thought was just, hey, he's going to play eventually, right? And Olave is going to benefit from that. And Jameis is, it was a small sample size last year, but it was trending the right way. And maybe Dennis Allen just didn't get a fair shake, and Oakland, and he deserved better, and he just didn't have pieces. None of those things were right. None of that happened. Like New Orleans were just a hard miss. Although a big part of the New Orleans handicap on anything we said maybe make this bet was the division's going to suck. So I'll take half credit on that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And also, like, I think with these two teams in particular is a good example of adapt in season, because I ended up making a lot of money betting Seattle through the middle portion of the year. The market just did not believe that team was as good as the numbers said they were, the offense in particular. And there was a 4 or 5 week stretch where Seattle on the spread was like my biggest staked play, and they won like 4 of them. And so the fact that we were quick to kind of realize what was happening there and the potential for the good was solid. Now, I gave back a lot on Seattle not winning their division and not winning their playoff game, which hurt me. But besides that, it was not even not winning their playoff game, not covering a 10-point spread when they were up at halftime. I think the adjustment on Seattle was pretty quick. By week 3 against Atlanta, we kind of knew, oh, this offense is live. They're going to score. They can win games. They're going to cover spreads, take them as dogs. And that served us well through the middle of the season. And then the flip side with the Saints of, oh, this team is not as good as I thought. I am going to abandon ship.
I feel like I bet quite a few. I feel like I had a bunch of Saints unders. Just how poorly
game by game.
Yeah, how poorly that offense was playing just game by game, and the defense actually wasn't bad. And maybe it was just some of the matchups that I ended up playing. I think I was on some of those unders.
I bet very few Saints games. Really just never felt like I had a good read on that team, and just kind of stayed away, and that I think served me well. Except I did bet the hell out of the Saints to get some equity out of my Nick Sirianni Coach of the Year ticket, second to last week of the season. And stings that he didn't win. Stings that he didn't win, but that was at least the consolation prize.
And yeah, Holt is asking, alt win totals laddering still the way to go. I don't think it's the way to go on every team, although Plus EV did put that paper out a couple years back that proved like here's the prices, and a lot of the prices are just mispriced. And I mean, he was betting him in the blind, and that still turned out to be profitable. Unless you want to go, 150 bets across the board and go alt totals both ways on a bunch of teams. I don't think it's good to do it in volume. But if you really, really strongly believe in a team, like we're saying, hey, the Eagles are a candidate to be the team with the most wins. Like a team you really think like, hey, the NFC's weak, the schedule's weak, the other teams in the division are weak, and this team could outperform their win total by 3, 4, 5 games. I think they did outperform by 4.5, 5 games. I feel like it was 9, 9.5, somewhere in there. Probably like I would take some limited shots on that. If you really, it's tougher to the under. I think it's just, some of the teams that you really think are going to suck. Like if you want to go to the under too, I don't think you can do it on a bad team. You have to pick, a middling team that you think is going to flounder at the quarterback position and take a real dive. I'm trying to think of what one of those a good example of that would have been this year. I bet under, and that's a great one.
Yeah, Denver. The two that were pretty clear. Well, actually, what's funny, I didn't do the math yet, Holt, on whether alt win totals are still the way to go. But I can tell you just by looking at the standings and current numbers and just eyeballing this, the average
Denver, Arizona.
The average miss on this, Rams, right? We're in Rams like 11 games. They won 5. No, the general misfit on the win totals was again like right around 2. It was like right around 2, and honestly, like the teams that came in around 500 went way over or way under. A bunch of them. Green Bay went way under and 8-9. Tampa went way under at 8-9. Seattle went way over at 9-8. Giants went way over at 9-7. So I shouldn't say way over. I think they went 2 games over, but still it was. Yeah, alts are and will always be the way to go in the win total market because they refuse to acknowledge the correct distribution of outcomes and misprice what one win is worth. I don't know why that still is not a thing that's priced correctly, but it's not.
Yeah, I almost want to amend mine because we found like for many years the average miss has been like 2.
Yeah,
and that includes teams that land nuts on. I mean, so there are going to be 5, 6 teams that are right on or within a half that bring that average down. So I think there's a case for if you like a team over or under and there's a decent price on an alt, you should at least take one step away. Like if you're betting over 6.5, bet over 7.5 as well. How many of these, like my biggest position, and it wasn't particularly close, was the Bears under 6.5. Like not taking enough 5.5 was apparently a 4.5, 3.5 was a massive mistake. And in my part, I didn't have any 5.5. It was all 6.5. So, I mean, just probably taking, if you like something strongly enough, at least taking part of your stake and putting it one full, win total.
At least one.
A full game and then
half
maybe
stake
even
2. Yeah.
Maybe even a smaller one at 2. And, so I don't think laddering, like a massive laddering all the way up or all the way down is probably a great idea, but at least 1 or 2 out is probably where you need to be.
Yeah.
And yes, the Bears, if you had laddered the Bears down,
they were 3-4 when they beat the Patriots on and Zappy on Monday Night Football.
They were 2-1, man. You were not feeling great. I was so pissed about that Niners game. Yeah. That was all my Survivors leagues. All of them. I like to put my eggs in a basket because eggs were cheap. I mean,
there was a lot of Survivor flameouts in week 1. Colts tied, which was a loss. There were some other wild ones. Colts tied the Texans week 1, which was hysterical. All right. Well,
that's when you knew they weren't winning the division.
Anything that you want to reflect on that you need to do better this next time around?
It's the same answer I've talked about for years with college basketball stuff that's helped me out. Just automating more things. Like so many of the stats that I pull in, and some of it is more difficult, and I've gotten better at that. it used to just be, I mean, my first scraping was just copying and pasting. This goes into a spreadsheet. I know which cell to click on when I hit Control V, so it goes into the right spot, so all the V lookups work right. And then you get a little past that, but getting better at that. Like my biggest summer, and this is not just for football, this will also be for college basketball and other things I do, is just continuing to get better at automating and scraping data in, because there's so much more data now. There's so much stuff you can use. There's so many things I'd like to have at my fingertips that I don't. And I mean, even to some of the stuff you do, I want to get more player level data coming in super fast and really accessibly.
That was time well spent. Really?
Yeah, and I guarantee you this: everything is going to take way longer than you think. You're going to spend way more time on YouTube and Google figuring out how to do this and reading freaking articles and trying to find a workaround to get something to work to properly, pull some data across where you want it to go. It's always worth it. Like at the end, once you get it to work, it's always worth it. So for sure, that's my biggest takeaway for NFL is just pulling in more data, constantly having that, and probably doing some of the things Noops does a good job, and I know you do too, with the both in both cases with the NBA, is just kind of tracking maybe some market sentiment kind of metrics as far as how certain teams are, and I think that's going to be more totals.
That's a good call.
More so in the totals. And then one other thing that I talked about, but I didn't actually have time to execute, was a bit of this is really far out. Like, and I don't mean like far out by like something you would say in the 80s if something was crazy.
Far out.
I mean like far out because I don't have enough of an idea, and this is going to have to kind of come to me as it goes, but positional matchup stuff. Using so super 10,000 foot, like a real easy one is just like pass rush win rate by players, pass rush win rate by defensive players matchup for this team. Like on, just at first glance, it looks like this is a decent matchup for the defense. And then you dig in and realize it's actually not. They're not going to be getting to the quarterback. However many data points you need to be putting in there, if it's, average time to delivery for the quarterback, win rates for each of the starting offensive linemen, the number of passes they throw per game, the number of third and long situations they create, pin your ear back situations, however granular you need to go on something like that to take and create these matchups, whether it's, the receiving core versus the cornerbacks, or even more granularly, just like slot corner versus slot wide receivers for team by team, and to be able to just mash that all together and start looking at, because this is where you get, when you get to like week 8, man, it's tough. Every one of those numbers looks pretty decent. Some openers are a little soft, but to be able to differentiate and say like, man, there's like 6 things kind of at a micro level at this game that I think Kansas City is going to be doing so much better than Denver as far as matchups go. And it's enough to say like, not only am I betting this -3.5, I'm probably betting this -7.5.
Oh, I like it. I like that.
So, it's a big project that probably won't get done, but
that's okay.
Casey Brown brings up. This is something I did a while back too. I felt horrible about this, honestly, at the end of it. I'm too polite, but I did use Fiverr to have somebody build something for me to scrape something for college basketball that was just beyond me, and I needed him. And this guy did it for like $1. I mean, it wasn't like it, but it was like $11 or something. And I it's from like Mozambique, and it was crazy. I'm like, seriously? And you could tip. So I tipped like 200%. I felt just awful. Like he did this huge project for this amount of money. But go over to Fiverr. There are some incredibly talented individuals who can apparently do something for pennies. And not only that, but once they do it, you can start looking at how they did it and start picking that apart and learn a little bit from that too.
I love it. Okay, well, a couple
You just
couple
plug
of
this in, go.
Incredible. A couple of thoughts on what you just mentioned. So basically everything you're describing fits exactly into my ethos about modeling, because a lot of people, they're like, first question as they get beyond sort of entry level sports betting is like, how do I build a model? What do I do? Where's some resources? What should I?
The answer is, right? You build a horrible model. That's the first step. You build the worst one possible, then go from there.
Yeah, that's just a good answer. My ethos is always just like, you have to make it easier on yourself. You have to. Like, if you build something that is labor intensive, that's complicated to maintain, it's gonna fall apart. You're gonna take a week vacation, come back and be like, fuck that. Like, I'm not even gonna bother. Like, it's so hard to get it back up and running. I'm not gonna bother. You're, kind of alluding to a lot of shortcutting the process, which is hugely important, because ultimately, even if you have the best model, at the end of the day, I still think an analytical tool in hand is still just a tool. You need a little bit of a mental model to go with it. You need a little bit of market, understanding markets beyond just, what's a fair number, right? Like, you need all of that stuff to be able to navigate, in the long term. And the more you can automate on the modeling side of it, the better off you're going to be, surely. So modeling, automating scraping, no brainer. Automating the parts of your process where you're looking at trying to come up with matchups. I would honestly, if you want a recommendation or a tip, like, normalize everything to standard deviations and z-scores, and literally just look for difference. When you have a z-score difference of 1 or more, then flag it, sum the ones, sum them all up. And if you have like a +2, a -3, like, if you have these kind of multiple levels that are all compounding, like, this pass offense, the quarterback has a nice matchup against the pass defense, and the offensive line has a nice matchup against the pass rush and the slot corner. And if you can create like levels,
10, I love that. Like, you create like 10 of these matchups, get some z-scores for every.
A lot of the time,
look at the differences.
If it's within one standard deviation, you probably don't really care. You don't need to be granular on exactly what the average. If I sum them all, like, you just want the big outliers to pop in some way, and you want to sum them up in aggregate so that you have a clear bam. Like, bam, look at this. Like, pay attention to this. You want it to scream at you, like, pay the fuck attention, for the ones that are just real clear outliers. And even then, at the end of the day, you want to be able to use it to move the center of your prediction for a team's performance so that you can still come up with a fair, because, the Bengals going up against, Bengals offensive line up against, the world's best pass rush. Everybody in the fucking world knows it's a bad matchup, right?
And not only that, but you need to probably normalize it with the, just create a no vig money line and normalize it with that a bit too, because you might flag a bunch of big mismatches and then like, yeah, but they're -11. Like, there's going to be, when the Chiefs play the Texans, a bunch of big mismatches is your expected outcome when you run this.
Yeah.
Like, you need to look at this over a big sample and say, like, what's my
does
average?
That mean?
What's my average mismatch normalized by money line? By just converting that to a no vig percentage and say, like, on average, X% should be this much of an outlier on these matchups. And then once you get to a spot where, like, all right, this is a touchdown favorite, but they're having enough mismatches that they are probably closer to, somebody who normally would be a 10-point favorite here. That's maybe a little bit something. And then, and then also use your noodle. Don't black box anything.
Oh yeah. No way.
Put some context to it. Make sure, make sure everything's in order before you just go start betting.
Yeah. So what I'm talking about in terms of z-score, standard deviation, a 50th percentile is a 0. An 84th percentile is a 1. A 95th percentile is a 2. And if you just take
the bell curve with the lines in it.
The way you get a standard deviation mismatch, if you have a +0.5 and a -0.5, and the sum is showing you that there's a gap of 1 there, that you want that to pop. You want to see, like, okay, this unit has a meaningful advantage. This unit has a meaningful advantage. Sum them all up, and it's saying, oh, this game, this passing offense, I give them a +3 for this game. Well, and then you can go back and look at a couple of years worth of data and say, okay, all of the +3s, how much did they exceed their expected performance by? If we want to use EPA per play for a game level, if we want to use just market expected points scored, like you can, kind of correlate all of that stuff so that hey, if I have a +3, I need to be adjusting my team's expected score by 3 points, by 5 points, or by this percentile, or by this Z-score. You want to be able to carry it into how much does this impact what the market rating ought to be. And yeah, like you said, don't treat it as a black box. Use it, use a, oh, there you go. I love it.
Yeah.
Use a mental model on top of everything, because there was a clip circulated today that was pretty good from the new guy who took over the Titans, who just cut everybody.
Yeah.
Where he was basically like, analytics is super important. You look at the tape and then you back it up with analytics. Like, if that's your approach, that's fucking great. You should have some combination so you have some redundancy. You shouldn't be relying on only one or the other. And I think probably the most successful people in this in the betting space, I would guess, have the sharpest mental models of everything, but they have some analytical models to help them do some ground truthing. And I think that's probably the preferred approach, but I haven't talked to those people, so I don't really know that for sure. But that's my gut read.
Yeah, maybe listen to that part a couple times. That's a good one to, like, maybe we could create.
Quarterbacks. 2.5.
Nobody heard what you said, but we could do a bit of an example on that. I'm trying to think what would be a good way to do it. Maybe just like a Google sheet that has something like that to kind of show people. But that'd be an interesting project over the summer, just to have a couple things to share. Yeah, class was in session there. Drew got heavy on the math and he started talking fast. But yeah, thank God there weren't any internet issues during that part. So you can rewind that part. This is on YouTube.
Bryce Young's
what about you?
Z-score -2.5. Yeah, he's a -2.5 probably. Something I need to do better in. I had something queued up, but your whole conversation was so good that I completely forgot and I didn't write it down.
What was not being a spaz?
Well, yeah, that would be nice.
You're keeping your emotions level.
Yeah.
You were good this year.
I don't know that I'm ever going to get that under control.
No, I think that's just part of it.
And honestly, creating content, you want to let your foot off the brake a lot, because it creates good content, I think. I don't know. Or I'll be embarrassed.
People still bring up the Sunday night after the Bills game.
I was the maddest I've ever been. I don't think, regarding a sporting outcome, that was the maddest I think I've ever been. That was a huge swing. That was a huge swing.
It was a pretty rough, legitimately, what would you put of that? Not to dredge up bad memories, but like, with that much time left, even with those players, that coach, that team, like, the percentage chance that happens was not great. And then also
mentally, I was
too
like,
early. It was the overtime rules fucked us.
Yeah, I thought it was like 5% to happen, and then he didn't squib kick it, and then it was like 10% to happen, and then play, and it was like, oh shit. We went from 95% win probability to 50 so fast. I was like, I'm sick.
You talked about softening your priors for quarterbacks in new situations.
Oh yeah, that's a
and
good
then
one.
Also, I'll save the other one. So, it was don't be afraid to be the buyback on the injury and overreaction.
Yeah,
I think we talked about that a little during the season too. We said, hey, you can actually probably make a fairly confident guess at the difference between a quarterback and their backup if you have any data on the backup, or even data on the team playing with a backup. You can use some EPA per play data and get within a pretty reasonable guess of what the difference in win percentage should be between one quarterback and the other. But it's a lot more difficult when it's a left tackle or both running backs, or a wide receiver plus a tight end, where it's like, hey, here's a cluster injury at a non-quarterback position. It's really, really difficult to judge that. And I think the point you were making is, if it's not a quarterback, the reaction is usually too strong. Like, I feel like it's if it's not a quarterback injury and people are betting, and it's like, hey, this isn't really a cluster. It's just like a semi-cluster. Like somebody ate half of a peanut cluster and left it on the table. This is not it. Like there were some strong reactions, I felt like, and some of them were overreactions for sure.
Oh, sure. And the other thing that
what point were you trying to make with that?
Well, which was that, like, sometimes the market moved a half point or a point, and I was like, I'll let it go. I was just too passive. When I thought the market may have overreacted to an injury, I was just like, I'd rather not have a part of this game than be wrong that the injury didn't matter as much as the market thought it did, right? Which is stupid. And similarly, like, there were some times we had some scoops on players not being available, and you looked at the market and you're like, I think that's broadly priced in, but not exactly priced in. And then it becomes public and the number moves 3 points, and you're like, that's too much, but I don't want to be the guy holding the bag, making them, providing the market resistance here. When these guys get run amok. So Holt brings up one that I definitely wanted to
I started
bring. This was one that was on top of my mind when I lost my train of thought earlier. We continue to learn about awards markets and how important recency bias is. Another year goes by, another kind of set of classic examples of just outrageous recency bias there. The most plus EV bets I made were Pat Mahomes MVP when the price was like minus 150, minus 200.
Yeah. I was going to say there was, I mean, there was even a spot where he was about plus between even and plus 200, where I'm like, I'm not sure there's an amount that I can bet that's too much right now.
Yeah.
At this point, because
that's the thing. Like, it is quantify. You hit JJF at 20-1 OPOI, and you hit Pat Mahomes MVP late in the cycle. Which was a more plus EV bet?
Oh, Pat Mahomes by a million.
Definitely.
It's not even a close.
Yeah.
Sam points out, if New York has anyone in the running, bet them. That's not the worst. I mean, Saquon,
unless it's comeback player of the year, yeah.
Saquon rookie. I felt like that one. He was getting a little extra love in that spot too when we hit that. Yeah. And you know what? I hate to be like sour grapes guy, but the Sirianni bet was a great bet. Anybody who made a bet on Sirianni at anything over 5-1, that was an electric bet, and really, like, losing Hurts for a couple games, that really probably cost him that. Like, if he wins one or two of the, probably should have won the goddamn Saints game anyway.
Sure, won the Cowboys game. They had the ball at the end of the Cowboys. Mike McCarthy bungled the end of that game.
Going like 16-1, you're just not losing it. Ask Ron Rivera. Like, he wasn't a great coach that year.
I can't complain about Nick Sirianni anymore because I forgot that middle hit on the Cowboys game, and that was my one time. That was my one time all season. I don't get to complain.
What was that?
Hurt was not going to play. Yep, Cowboys were -1. It was like a pick 'em. Cowboys might have been open as dogs. I don't even remember now, but it was low. It was under 3 for sure.
Yeah, it was like Cowboys even money, and then you could also get them. Oh yeah, it was a weird price. There was a bit of a middle there.
It crossed 3 once the Hurts news was confirmed. Surely,
yeah.
And at that point, you were basically like, Cowboys by 3. Let's go. Cowboys by 2, 3, or 4, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the moral of the story about awards bets,
we bet Cowboys at a cheap money line, and then you took the Eagles plus the points.
That's what it was.
Yeah, we hit that. It was gorgeous.
That was my Christmas one time. I don't get to complain about Sirianni because Eagles win that game, which was close. Then, Sirianni gets the award for winning that game with Gardner Minshew.
75 points in that game.
That was a great.
To hit a small middle like that in a game with 3/4 of 100.
I was stuck in an airport watching that one.
You were in the Sacramento
Charlotte.
airport a lot.
I was stuck in the Charlotte airport trying to fly east. Yeah, a lot of travel nightmares this last year.
Thanks, Rule.
But yeah, the moral of the story on the awards markets: the most plus EV bets to be made are made at the end of the cycle.
Yeah. Again, the Mahomes bet, I bet that a couple times, bet it hard, and it made up for a pretty big swing I took on Josh Allen in the preseason. Not betting a shitload of offensive rookie of the years during training camp is probably a good call. Although, I mean, people that took like dubs at 100-1, and it wasn't like you guys were betting 5 units on Olave at 8-1. I mean, some of the offensive rookie of the year bets I've seen from you guys in the chat or in the over the course of the year, even in the Discord, they're big numbers. I don't think it's a bad. It's not like what we saw today with like a draft market, which is informational and important. It's like this guy is a big number. He's getting a lot of play in camp, and I mean, it turned out to be Watson was the better wide receiver up in Green Bay, but there's going to be some of those wide receivers in a big class like that where it's like this guy gets a ton of targets and suddenly he's in the conversation. So I didn't mind those at all. And yeah, and as Dan points out too, there just wasn't a good rookie quarterback. Like legitimately the best rookie quarterback was for sure Kenny Pickett.
Numbers wouldn't say it, but I agree with you.
No, and that's where we're at with because it is again, it's going to be a quarterback award if they get enough playing time and they're even half decent.
Yeah,
but
you know what's funny? You bring up Kenny Pickett.
This is Brock Purdy erasure. Sorry. He doesn't count. He could have been Dan at quarterback. Dan, you could have been in the NFC title.
I did have a quick point I wanted to make about the Steelers. So I thought that the market close, the betting into the close this year was less aggressive and less predictive than in years past. And maybe it was just because I felt like I had good positions, I had a good read, I wasn't paying as close attention. That's entirely possible. One of the kind of things I tend to do when things are going poorly is pay very close attention to what's happening at the close, where people are convicted and whether that's right or wrong. Right. And I didn't really do that much this year, but it was very clear come the middle of the season that the market broadly, or the market makers, couple of market makers, were very hot on the Steelers. Like to the tune of your Steelers rating must be wrong. Right. And when you see that signal, like I got to pay closer attention to like who's getting bet into the close consistently and just kind of use that as ground truthing a little bit more for what market sentiment is and ought to be for certain teams. Because I jumped on the bandwagon after they came off the bye. They were a different team. Matt Canada was running a different offense. Everybody was playing a lot harder, and Kenny Pickett all of a sudden was turning over the ball less, and they were just it was a different team. And so any prior you had based on the data you had from the season to that point was useless. They win against the Saints 20-10. I bet against them the next week where they lost to the Bengals 37-30, but my entire thesis was proven wrong by the way that they played that game because they scored 30 points. And I was like, oh shit. And then I think I bet them 12. I bet them week 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And then I finally went against them week 18, where I thought the Browns were going to feed them their lunch, but was wrong on that. So I hit like 6 in a row down the stretch. The only one that they didn't cover was the game they lost to the Ravens.
I think that's a good point too, is sometimes the market is, and it's silly to say this, like we're smarter than the market, but because we're not for the most part, but sometimes the market is really slow to react to some things.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's as simple as like a scheme change. And it's like, and I guess, if enough money is disagreeing with it and they're making money in other places. They're just going to keep betting on it. And you're fine being on the other side of that if you believe your thesis is right. But there are some spots where it's like, man, I think what they're doing here matters more than the market's saying. And this team is actually much better / much worse than they were a few weeks ago based on XYZ or, doing things a little differently on their offense. And you just end up betting a team like 4 or 5 times in a row like that. And you were all over. I joined you on a couple of those. I wasn't quite as intrigued by what was going on there.
Don't fix,
some of those games weren't super fun to watch.
Ain't broke, don't fix. Oh, they were awful. Oh, they were all awful. They were all close calls. Yeah.
I do want to point out that I misspoke earlier. Editor's note: the actual best rookie and quarterback in the class was Bailey Zappi for those 2 drives. Do you remember how good he looked for those 2 drives? And he was in that touchdown to the corner. It's like, oh my God, this guy's Jesus.
Yeah. Steelers, by the way, had the 28th EPA per play offense through the first 8 weeks of the season. They came out of their bye, and you want to guess what they had for weeks 10 through 18?
They were 7th.
4th.
Jesus.
4th in EPA per play out of their bye to the end of the season. So Steelers, don't rule them out from winning the AFC North next year.
Don't go sleeping on them.
Even though they brought back Matt Canada, who I think a lot of us were critical of.
Yeah, we did. We bet this 2 out of the half. We had some Cincy division live and in studio.
Yeah, that was a good one. Wish I had bet more on that. Wish I had bet more on the Jags in season. Those were fun.
That was nice.
Yeah.
I took it's
one of the
somebody said that in the chat today. Like you always wish you bet more on something in hindsight, and it's funny too. But like the Bengals one, even as close as that was of a call down to the last few weeks, and then the oddity that we had where they actually won the division on like how do you get fired on your day off kind of thing. Like they won their division in the middle of the week by virtue of canceling that game with the Bills. But boy, that was one too. Even at that point where it was like, Christ, why didn't I just put all the money on this? I think maybe we got some limits on that sort of stuff.
One other thing I need to do better at, or just recognize more carefully, and I know I'm a little laggy again, 3rd time in this freaking stream.
You're back. You sound good now.
I'm pulling my hair out here. I really do not know what's wrong.
It's gorgeous.
The lesson, and I know this every fucking year. I know this, and I just need to acknowledge it. NFL went well. NBA started poorly, right? And I paid all of the attention in the world. I was once both were going on simultaneously. This is 90-10 attention devoted to NFL. At that point, I just needed to stop betting the NBA. Like it was an absolute waste of time. Like if you are trying to handicap 2 things at the same time and you find your attention is split to the tune of you're not giving enough attention to one of the 2 things, then you're better off stopping. And for those reasons, hopefully none of you guys are donking money in college basketball or other classic mistakes you make when you're relatively new to this. Take a flush bankroll from a good NFL season and a good postseason and feel like you have an edge in a market that's extremely mature like college basketball. You don't. So
yeah, I think I'm having a horseshit college basketball season. I just lost another bet by like 20 points. And I think a lot of it is just I didn't have the time to tighten things up at the beginning of the season.
It's exactly the same.
And golf and NFL have taken so much time, and now we got XFL. And yeah, it's honestly everything is just going to revolve around the draft for the next 2 months for me. Outside of God, I love conference tournaments. Fuck, I love conference tournament time.
Starts like, this week, right? Or next Monday?
Week,
Monday?
I think the 4th.
I think conference tournaments start the 27th.
Do they? Jesus,
yeah.
That can't be right.
It is.
How did that sneak up on me? I got a busy weekend. But Yeah, Little League. I love betting on Little League. I love betting the hot dogs. Atlantic Sun is always so early. I don't know why they need to name their champion like 10 days before Selection Sunday, which is also fun. We have an Irish fella that works with us. He works here at BetSperts, works on some SEO for the various websites that we've acquired over the years here. Works on ship shaping, that sort of stuff, and making sure we have good articles and stuff. And it's fun because he just doesn't know all that much about American sports. So we got to fill him in on so I told him about Selection Sunday, and I was got to like make analogs from him. Like think the Champions League. Yeah, Dan points out Irish as in he lives in like Dublin, man, not Irish American. But I had to explain about Selection Sunday and what a big event it was, and how like people are going to search for articles around when is Selection Sunday and things of that ilk. I'm like, think Champions League draw, like that show, which I'm sure is huge. Like when they draw the balls to determine who's like playing who in the knockouts. I'm like, it's like that, but dumber for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, Selection Sunday is like what, 3 weeks. It's
don't bet on it, Andy.
Don't bet. God,
don't bet on it.
Oh my God, who is not excited about betting all the games in the first round?
Well, yeah, I don't know. That said, like you bet college basketball if you want. I'm not your fucking mom, but definitely down stake. Don't donk your entire bankroll on it. So, yeah.
To win should we do that? Pick to win the tournament. I railed on against Purdue, so Purdue probably wins it because I hate Purdue.
No, Purdue is the one seed that you fade with reckless abandon in every pool you're in.
Yeah, here's a 7'4" guy who takes like 34% of their shots, and they have
disastrous.
They have a young backcourt that turns the ball over at a super high clip.
Yeah, awful.
That scared me. Basically, all the teams I fell in love with when I started doing a dive the other day on like future prices, basically all the teams were in the Big 12.
Like, all the good ones. Yeah,
it's like fuck. I kind of like TCU now that they're healthy again. I kind of like Kansas. I kind of like. Honestly, I kind of like Texas. UCLA, not a bad call though. The Pac-12, I'm having trouble figuring out exactly. How to rank those teams comparatively against the people that grind it out in the goddamn Big 12 every day. But UCLA is not a bad shout.
Over the last month, number one rated team in all of college basketball in terms of advanced metrics is.
Are we doing WAB?
No, I'm looking at Bart Thag.
Just so for the last month?
Last month.
It might be Kansas.
Kansas is up there, but they're not number one.
Number one. I mean,
it's
Bama
not a Power Five.
Is it Houston again?
It's not Houston. Houston is 15th in the last month in terms of Bart Thag.
I mean, Gonzaga's had a nice one.
What were you going to say?
Gonzaga, San Diego State.
San Diego State is number one.
San Diego State. I brought them up earlier too today. I'm like, it's wild because usually it's like there's like 5 teams I think can win. And this year, I'm like, man, I think there's like 15.
Oh yeah, this is a wide open game.
There's a ton of pairs.
Oh yeah, this year is wide open.
And I said this on a podcast earlier today, which is not out yet. I said I am submitting the Mountain West to be in the power. It should be the Power 7 now. The Mountain West has played at such a high level the past few years. Like,
oh yeah,
it's a power conference now. Just give it to them.
I like it.
Fuck, they're fun.
I like it.
I'm here. Here's a parlay: San Diego State to win the NCAA tournament, parlayed with the no price on them to win their conference tournament.
Ooh,
the conference tournament's.
I feel like you do that as an open parlay because you're going to get a better price on them to win after they get in as an at-large.
There you go. The conference tournament's just a gorgeous shit show every year. I love that one so much.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other lessons or what else you got? What was the other one I mentioned when I scrolled back in our chat?
Oh, soft priors on quarterbacks who are on new teams. That's kind of a no-brainer though.
Yeah, and it goes both.
You know
ways.
Why it's a good one to end though, Andy? Because we're gonna have a whole shitload of quarterbacks on new teams in about 1 month, and I think taking a soft prior with all of those teams is a very fair point of view. Do you have any inclination to make an NFL bet right now in a futures market?
No. If I'm going to bet anything in the NFL, it'd be draft. And then after that, I would bet baseball, regular season win totals. And after that, I would bet March Madness futures. And there's a lot of things to get to before I bet anything in the NFL.
Okay.
Like there's people betting also I hate if I'm going to have my money tied up for a long time, the juice really has to be worth a squeeze. Like it has to be a pretty big price. And I know people like doing this over the summer. Christ, they're out now. There's game of the year. Dan pointed this out. There's game of the year lines up for college football. And if you have the bankroll that you've split up in a decent way where you're fine letting that money hang out, you can get some really good prices on game of the year. It's like, there's lines that are going to move 10, 15 points between now and when the game is played based on some things happening. It's hard to predict that all the time, but man, if I bet an NFL future, it'd have to be a massive price on something.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was going. Do you think, because going back to the off the top,
it's pre-free agency, pre-draft, pre-everything.
I think you know what I'm going to say.
I honestly don't. I'm lost here.
I kind of want to bet the Falcons in case they pull off the ice.
That's not what I thought you were going to say.
In case they pull it off, they are set up so perfectly to break Lamar.
Lamar plus a good tight end plus a good wide receiver plus doesn't matter at running back because they've proven that they can make whatever work with that. Draft
NFC South, which is by default they win.
Yeah, you win that by default with Lamar at that point because not only is there no other quarterbacks in the division unless Carolina trades for something, they're probably starting a rookie or worse.
Yeah, everybody could be starting. Everybody could be. Yeah,
Panthers probably 3 seed, Falcons 3 seed at worst.
Easy schedule.
Maybe the 2 seed, which would be not a big difference between the 2 and the 3. The only question would be how much draft capital are they giving up for Lamar?
2 firsts and something else, probably.
Yeah, because they have other needs, and it's hard to fill it in without those draft picks. They'd have to be pretty aggressive in free agency too for something like that.
I'm looking at 1,000 to win 100,000. Seem crazy?
Yeah, it does.
That's the biggest bet I could probably get down right now, I think.
I can cash out my Cavalier tickets for good price now.
Oh, good.
Little bit of money. Don't ever trust the Texans. Don't ever trust the Falcons, Dan says. That's honestly words to live by. Put that on my gravestone.
100 to 1. Just remember. Just basically trying to capture equity on a potential super high upside move by them at the quarterback position. Because of every team that realistically needs to upgrade, they've been the quietest, which means they are back channeling, putting together a package that cannot be beat. They got beat for Watson last year. They're not getting beat this year for Lamar.
What about 40 or 50 on NFC? I feel like.
Let me see what that price is. That's better. It's a higher likelihood for sure.
Yeah, it's a way better bet.
I don't think you can get that much. I don't know that you're going to be able to get that much down though. Let me see.
Let's not end the show with this downer. Betting the Falcons. God.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun to see what happens in free agency this way. 40 to 1. I can get 2 and 40K on the NFC.
Yeah, I'm all right with that.
Dude, a lot of games indoors. The Falcons don't get hurt. They've avoided the fewest ACLs going. You saw the ACL chart lately, I'm sure, right?
I did. Somebody
Falcons are way down there. Yeah. AJ Terrell anchoring that defense.
Here's a good bonus topic. Maybe not even specific games. I actually teased Noops about this. I teased the general betting public and kind of as a whole this morning with this. I said, hey, here's a bunch of players who haven't played for 7 days. what's going to be like the most used trope in
First half unders for sure. Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, it's just like, or this team is they had such a rough schedule and they run ragged in the first half. Now they're healthy and rested. Like they're going to cover all this numbers. So I didn't know if it would be something like that. First half unders really checks out though, as far as and also is that actually a thing or should
Yeah, it is. They're all deflated though, so don't.
All right, I'll leave it alone.
They used to be a bigger thing, like same way Christmas unders used to be a bigger thing.
Yeah,
largely priced in ish, not entirely.
Yeah, I'm just gonna watch. I'm just gonna watch NBA. Just gonna take it in tomorrow.
Okay.
For Champions League, I'm riding a Champions League heater.
No, today was the fourth match days.
You know what that means?
Europa.
Oh God. Europa's like the meme of the guy sneaking up behind the guy and like.
Oh yeah, I'm so caught up.
Momoa?
I'm so caught up. Oh yeah, it is. Europa sneaking up on Shape is like yeah. Jason Momoa sneaking up on Henry Cavill.
Look at this, guys. This is good talking to you at the bar the other night.
Oh, there you go. Stop hating football. I don't hate football. I love football.
If that happened in Arizona, I kind of remember parts of it. We had been just downing gummies that whole time. And the one night, God, how many banquet beers? Just buying by the buckets.
We were going bucket after bucket.
I know. I looked at the old bank account after Arizona.
Yeah, did some damage.
What did I keep buying for $60?
Did some damage out there.
It was a bucket of goddamn beers.
Oh, I think I got like 3 or 4 of them. So we must have gone through a dozen.
12.
Jesus Christ. All right. Well, good work by us. Yeah, I've been. I'm pulling to pull off the impossible against PSG. This PSG going down.
Yeah, you cut out. Nobody heard. That's why I said I couldn't agree more. It was funny.
Four times in the stream.
It was funny too. Noops and I. That's almost worth a clip. Noops looking at the Champions League lines this morning. He's like, "How the hell is the Man City line 2.5? Well, shouldn't that be a 3?" And I'm like, he's like, "Is it a trap?" And there's no traps. But I'm like, I kind of like the under, but there's no chance I'm betting a Man City under. And it's funny, I ended up on an over in that game, a live over 1.5, which did get there, but Christ, that was closer than it needed to be. But Inter looked like shit for 80 minutes, got a red card, and scored with like at the 85th or somewhere in there. And
Romelu Lukaku, yeah, Rocky chair winner.
Nobody got my I don't think enough people got my tweet either.
I got it. Well, yeah. You're shooting at you're a high level joke craftsman. So I almost turned off replies just to see if someone would be mad about that. I wanted to finish it. They made them stop doing that cheer back at Man U because it was vaguely racist. Some of the implications of the it had whiffs of racism. Yeah, it had the aroma.
Did have some whiffs.
It had the aroma of racism. Yeah,
that's why I only did part of it. So
yeah, okay.
All right,
man.
Yeah, well, instead of the Falcons, we'll end with that.
No, Falcons are winning the ship.
Yeah, Porto. You deserve better on Porto plus a half, guy.
I just want to see Lamar on that fast field in Las Vegas next year, this time of year. Just shredding Mahomes and the Chiefs.
This is what we will close with. Give me predictions for Carr, Rodgers, and Lamar. Just faster.
Carr's washed. Rodgers is washed. Lamar wins the Super Bowl.
Which teams do they go to?
Sorry. Carr Jets, because that's the least awesome thing that could happen to the Jets. Rodgers. Fuck, man. Stick with the Packers. And then Lamar actually leaves.
Okay. I'll go Rodgers Jets because this whole Derek Carr thing seems so overblown.
Oh, so bad.
Carr Carolina because I don't understand how the Saints can sign people. Like they'd have to cut so many people. And I'll have fun. Lamar to the Falcons is just too much fun.
I love it. Lamar to the Falcons would be the best.
That would be super fun.
Let's fucking go.
Rodgers to Jeopardy. That's a good call out of the half.
Ooh, Rodgers out of the league. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with Carr out of the league too, by the way. I don't really care where he goes. All right, let's wrap. Good show. Best. We'll get him next year again. Hope you guys all enjoyed.